Welcome to Conversations With. My name is Shaley Hoogendoorn, and I live with bipolar 2 disorder. Sharing with others is healing, both individually and collectively. Sharing our stories will educate others, bring more understanding, shed more light, and smash more stigma. Our voices need to be heard. Our stories aren't over yet. This is bipolar. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to This is Bipolar. I am your host, Shaley Hoogendoorn. If you haven't been here before, I am a mom. I am a wife. I am an elementary school substitute teacher, and I am a mental health advocate that lives with bipolar 2 disorder. And today I am doing a solo episode. I do these once in a while just to spice things up a little. Also, so that I don't actually talk more than my guests. And today, I wanted to talk to you about parenting. A lot of people ask me about parenting and pregnancy and having children. So I have thought up a few things to share. I am putting together a parenting panel. So right now submissions are open for folks that want to send in requests to be on the podcast, whether you have babies or littles or big kids. Love to put together a panel. And what I was thinking is that I have a lot of things to say about it. So I should probably record one with my thoughts so that I don't end up being the panelist that talks the most. So here we are. Before we get started, I wanted to invite you to something new and exciting. Forever and ever and ever, I was talking about a Patreon, but something cooler has happened. I've been offered subscriptions on Instagram, which means that you subscribe, and it is $6.99 US a month, and you get extra content. There is an extra 15 to 20 minutes, up to 40 minutes of extra content of each and every guest episode of something that we didn't talk about in the public podcast. It is a exclusive subscribers only. I am going to be doing a live there that is only for subscribers every 2 weeks. And hopefully we will be able to go deeper together and spend more time together and just be greater to support for each other. So please sign up. If this podcast means anything to you, sign up, subscribe, like. I would love, love, love to have you there. There are already some folks in there and we're having some cool conversations. So you would jump in and there would already be things there. If you are someone that is like, I don't want to talk to anybody, I would love to see the extra content, but I am not into it. I am not public that I live with bipolar disorder, mood disorders, or mental illness, but I'm very curious. You can just hang out. You don't ever have to engage or do other things. It's all up to you how much you want to be involved. But some people I know are just signing up just to support and look at the content once in a while. So I thank you to other folks that have signed up already. I hope that you will join me there and support me. It means the absolute world to me. All right, let us get started. So, parenting with bipolar disorder. So first of all, I wanted to go back to pregnancy. A lot of people ask me about that. So I was not diagnosed when I was pregnant. When I was trying both pregnancies, I have 2 daughters. Right now they are 16 and one's turning 18 at the end of the month. So I have medium big kids, almost adults. And so just so you get an idea of timeline. So when I have wanted to be a mom my whole life. I'm just a kid person. I'm an elementary school teacher. You can find me at most of things, family playing with the kiddos, sitting at the kid table. I knew this was something I wanted. So I had been teaching full time almost 2 years. And I just knew my husband and I had been married, I think 4 years. And I wanted to get started. something my mom had said once had always kind of stuck with me. She had kids young as well. And so she always thought that she really wanted her children to have time with their grandparents. And I know we don't know how long of time we have with our parents, but I wanted my kids to be able to know my parents really well and have a close relationship with their grandparents. And also, I just had this idea in my head, and I know you shouldn't make timelines, but that I would be finished having kids by the time I was 30. So I was like this goal thing. So I was pumped when I started thinking. I was reading all the books. I was thinking about timing. I was trying to time it to go back to teaching. Maybe I could, only have to take off certain time, because at that time, there was no way that I was staying home. Stay tuned. I stayed home. And so I was really pumped. And at that time, I had started doing hot yoga about the Bikram's one, about like 6 months, maybe more, before I started that. And I was in bipolar fashion, all in. So I was going 2 times a week, sometimes 3, and closer to trying 4 times a week. And so it's like an hour and a half. And if you've ever done, it's the hardest exercise I've ever done. The sweating is amazing, but I'm not sure if it was that or the excitement about thinking about getting pregnant, but I was pretty elevated. And that looked like me going more, me being elevated in the classroom. I had all the ideas. I was doing super cool things with the kids. I was always talking about getting pregnant. And I know my mom and some of my aunties were like, okay, but sometimes it takes a while. But I was convinced that it wouldn't take very long. And so I also had this kind of messed up body things, which I realize now has completely came along with the depression and disorder. When I am depressed, I have binge eating disorder. And so that looks like restricting and then like eating till I was sick, but then I didn't actually throw up, and fluctuating so much. And then the months that I was hypomanic, I would shed all the weight that I lost in the winter time, because I'm very cyclical, and I would forget to eat or eat way less, because I was busy and I was so active and moving. And so my idea was, because I was doing the hot yoga, I was probably in the best shape I'd ever been. And mentally, that fall, I actually didn't get depressed. And the only thing I was doing different was the hot yoga. And I think that's it. Yeah, I wasn't taking medication at the time, and for anything, because I had taken medication for depression and anxiety before and then after this. And so, yeah, we started trying the second month, preggers, and I was, ecstatic, except then I started getting really sick. I was nauseous every moment of every day, almost 4 months. And it was so intense, and trying to teach that. And I taught kids specifically, the entire school was kids with learning disabilities. And so it was a lot of needs, and it was intense. And I would work like 10, 11 hours a day. And I was just exhausted. I would come home and I would like literally sleep until dinner, have dinner, and go back to sleep, because we know when we're growing a human that it takes a lot of energy. And so I started to, slip a bit into what I would probably call like a low-grade depression. I was really irritable. I was even irritable with like my bosses at work. I worked in a really small school, like really small, private school for kids with learning disabilities, and didn't have a lot of substitute teachers, because there was only 3 actual teachers, and then a whole bunch of tutors that did specific phonics teaching. And so I needed to call in sick some days, and I just couldn't, because there would be no one to cover. And I remember specifically getting really irritated and agitated and not expressing this kindly to the principals and owners of the school. So that was embarrassing. And I look back now, and it was, a lot to do with being in a depression. I immediately that night, after I had been frustrated with them, I realized that I probably could have handled that differently. After the initial 3-4 months, I was fine. I didn't care what I ate. I wasn't focused on weight anymore, so I wasn't binging, and it was just really, really great. The rest of my pregnancy was, I didn't love it. I never loved being pregnant, but there wasn't huge complications. And then the middle part, my kids are almost 2 years apart. I think they're 23 months apart. And the in between the two was hard, because when I got pregnant the second time, it was when my daughter was 15 months old. So she was still nursing and I was sick again, and I just had to stop the nursing. I was completely overwhelmed with feeling sick. It was very hard to take care of her. I remember as soon as my husband got home, I would just like pass him the baby or be like, "You're it." I had called my mom, who lived out of town, to come and stay several weeks, a bunch of the times that I needed, because I couldn't barely eat anything. It was just awful. But I did make it, fun for my kid. And she probably didn't notice too much, because we had this really fun game called Sick Mummy on the Couch. And she would watch Dora and other shows, and I would lie on the couch. And I would buy like a whole bunch of gifts from the dollar store and wrap them up, and then like pass them to her when I was like half asleep to entertain her. So she probably would remember it as a fun time, but it was Sick Mummy on the Couch was not fun. And during that time, I had 5 months into having my first, I like panicked. I panicked at the thought of going back to work and having her at daycare. I was so loving being a mom. I was really into it. In fact, after both children, I thought it was postpartum anxiety or depression, because it was something after having kids. And so that's what maybe the doctor was saying. But looking back now, I know it was hypomania, or maybe a small form of rapid cycling. I wasn't sleeping. I was so excited. Like when you're supposed to sleep when the baby sleeps. No, I remember one night I was up half the night. I decided to take out every single thing out of every single cupboard and rearrange the kitchen. Not normal behavior, on top of nursing all the time and being the main caregiver. And that was intense. And then I would crash a little bit after. I also really struggled with feeling like I was doing the right thing, right? I had all the magazines. Went to the baby classes, and I would just get so upset because it was just too much. It was, I was doing baby sign language, and then all of a sudden, guess what? Now I became an instructor. I would do like sign up for all the classes where you would weigh the kids, they would tell you, all the foods you weren't supposed to teach them. It was all these professionals, but they just made the standards seem impossible. And I know that the weight of that was really, really hard on me. And I would, stay up at night for hours and hours, trying to think about the best way to do something, right? I remember when we started solids, oh my gosh, I made it into such a big deal, like what we could do and what we couldn't do. And then once I would decide, then there would be some times where I would be totally fine. Like I had a lot of times with the kids, and even to this day, periods of euthymia, which means symptom free. And so one of the things that I did notice is I'm an extreme extrovert, and I think that it's a combo of that and the bipolar disorder that made it impossible for me to stay at home. I call myself a stay-at-home mom that never stayed home. I think looking back now, I was afraid to be alone, because when I was alone, I would worry that I was doing the wrong thing, or I was, not playing with my kid enough, not reading with my kid enough, even though I think as an elementary school teacher, like I overdid it. Like I was playing a lot. I do remember though being very paranoid, but like sticking up for myself. Like I felt judged in a lot of ways. And I felt for some reason I got this idea that I was really judged at church, especially for the breastfeeding, right? There's always like purity culture and all these things, and everybody, I had a cover, and it's not like I was being inappropriate, but I know that they had a nursing room, and I was really upset about that. I didn't want to be tucked away in a corner. I didn't think it was fair. I would get all riled up about that. And at that time we were in a small group Bible study, and they would ask me if I had to feed her to go like in another room, because they didn't want their husbands to possibly see, if my breast nipple fell out, that it might be like a temptation or something ridiculous. And that infuriated me. So despite them being my good friends, I bailed, and they didn't have children yet. And I just felt like they didn't get it. And so I look back now, and there was a lot of overreactions there. Did they have basis for me thinking those things? Yes, but I made them like into such a big deal. I didn't really want to be alone that much. So I was talking to another friend, and she was talking about how going out was overwhelming, getting the baby ready, what people thought. I loved that part. I was literally up and out of the house, full face makeup, cute outfit, baby in the cutest outfits, of course, and doing things. I joined every group that there was. Like I just joined everything. I literally would plan something with someone in the morning and the afternoon. And my first daughter learned to nap everywhere and anywhere. And I look back now and I think, I think I was afraid to be alone. In fact, even before, years and years, I don't enjoy being alone now. I love my alone time, but then I didn't know, and I didn't think I needed it, which clearly I did, because there wasn't a lot of time for any grace for myself or relaxation or anything like that. And so the years were, super fun, also riddled with like hyper anxiety, which is a lot different than like a fear. Like I didn't have a fear my baby would stop breathing, or I didn't have fears. Mine were more like, am I doing this right kind of thing? And very much outside of the house, making, sure that I looked like I was, doing things right, or that I had it together. I would hang out with this new group that I had met at my church that had babies too, that just got it. And that really, really helped. When I talk about my tips, I would definitely talk about community, because I realized what was normal, and I could tell the truth in those spaces. And soon we were like tired of going to each other's houses. We founded a mom's group at the church, where it wasn't just those other groups where we went and played with our kids with other people. I was like, I can play with my kids at home. I want to visit moms. So we would go to the nursery at the church, put the toys out, and basically let the kids play, and us moms would talk. It became quite popular. Also, because I do circle time and I know songs and books, we would have time, and I would host that. But here I was with a baby and a toddler, and then during my second pregnancy, like running a group, like just running myself into the ground, but loving it. And I think that's where the hypomania came in, because I didn't get tired of it. And in fact, with my second, I would organize once a month a cool activity. We would get babysitters, and then we would do a cool activity. And this was back when scrapbooking was cool. I'm showing my age, like with actual paper and glue and stuff and stamps. Anyways, I had planned one for a Saturday. So I had my second baby on Thursday, and I hosted that on Saturday. There was no staying home for this gal. And so, I still continued to do that through their entire toddler times. In fact, we even made the group like more intense and doing more cool things. And sometimes we'd have up to like 25 moms, and usually they had multiple children. So it was a lot, but loved it. I love stuff like that. I loved getting involved in everything. So I don't have social anxiety. So when we have the other parents, hopefully someone can speak to that but I did not have social anxiety. It was like the opposite of it. And so that was then when also we lived in like a 900 square foot townhouse. So it was a lot. The toys were always out. It was hard to keep it like super tidy and organized, which is what I try to do. Don't look in my closets. That's where I put everything, but I like things to, to be kind of neat and organized, which was impossible in that small of a space. And so my second came along. I was still doing the same thing. When my second was like 1.5, that's when the cycle started again, where I would get depressed in the winter. Because I think the first years of them, I didn't have huge depressions, but I went back to having the deep, deep darkness in the winters. And so basically, I would hold it together for the kids, still go out, still do all the things. But I was pretty numb during it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I used to. The kids could always make me laugh and smile, so that really helped. They were never as dark as they were before. I didn't have a ton of suicidal ideation, but I did feel like maybe I could sleep until it would be gone, better, because I knew that I would eventually snap out of it and snap into something else. I thought the hypomania was like the real me, that I was like buzzing and that I had a high vibration, which I actually do, but this was beyond me and hypomania. So I started feeling like that again. And then the anxiety was going up and I was getting irritable. And so I did things where I would take things that I enjoyed over the top. So I did huge themed birthday parties, huge, and where I would like transform the space. I would do it actually at my friend's mom's house. So she was so lovely, let us do it there. And because it was bigger, my place was too small. And I would she had so many rooms and we would just decorate them all. I had like a castle for the princess one. But generally I would just go. And then usually the day before, the morning of, I would freak out somehow, probably most likely at my husband. I remember the night before the princess party, I was like, I cannot make the cake. I had things to make like castle cake with like turrets and like fancy things, and I broke down. I couldn't. My husband actually made it. He did probably a better job than me, but I would push for these things to be so perfect that actually only enjoy like a few, like the actual party, but then I would usually crash afterwards, especially by my the second birthday, which is in the end of November. And by then I would just crash until Christmas. And it was really hard. It was hard on the family. I couldn't just do things, just do, nothing was ever good enough. It always had to be better. And I remember when the anxiety was just, I got anxious about potty train, or I'd get anxious about those things that, the timing wasn't right, or I had to do it a certain way. And when I was hypomanic, I remember I made this like intense program that I was going to do. And I made like this huge poster board of chart where she could put stickers and then get a prize. And not that it wasn't awesome, but it was like, I would go so overboard that I would bail on it like a week or so later because it would be so rigid. Winter, I went in and we actually brought it to my doctor and said, hey, I think I might be living with bipolar disorder. I really relate to a lot of these things. And then, of course, he was like thinking I was a Google doctor. And so was like, nope, you wouldn't be able to take care of your kids. You wouldn't have your education degree. You wouldn't be able to hold it together if you had bipolar disorder. So we threw that out the window and he gave me an antidepressant and off I went. Then I started to get more hyper again and hyper. And you can go and listen to what happened with all of that and the crash and how the medicine antidepressant that my doctor gave me, as he upped it, it made me more and more hypomanic until back to the hypomanic and pre-diagnosis episodes at the very beginning, and you can hear the rest of that story. But I went away and I was diagnosed. I was away from the kids for a week. My mom came down and I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. And it took a long time even when I came back home, I wasn't hospitalized. I was in this place where you could go for the in-between, like if you were weaning off medicines and things like that. So they could observe you because they didn't know I wasn't sick enough to be in the psych ward, but also I was like, I don't want to go home. I want to figure this out once and for all. I can't live like this anymore. I felt horrible, of course, because I had run away. We had missed this huge wedding that we were supposed to go to. And I thought maybe I ruined my kids. They don't even remember. And I kind of hid out. So we weren't doing our normal activities. And my daughter was supposed to be going to kindergarten in the fall. And I was just distraught about that. Even before I went in, were we going to put her in French immersion? That's what we had her signed up for. But then I was like, maybe I need to homeschool. I'm a teacher. Obviously, I should homeschool. I could do it awesome. But then I knew she needed kids, and she had done a couple hours of preschool, and this was even when it was only half days. And then just to be apart from her, I just was beside myself. And at this point, I was still trying to get better on the new medicine, and I convinced that we were going to move to like this teeny tiny island of like it was very hippie island, a place where kids were like unschooled, not just like homeschooled, like unschooled. I just agonized over that decision, and I cried so many tears. And also when I was getting better and getting up to the dose that helped, there was a lot of anger, and I wouldn't take it out on the kids, but I would hold it together. But unfortunately, my partner experienced a lot of that wrath, which I have a lot of regrets about that, even though I now understand that it was more to do with my illness than personality flaws. This forced me to ask for help. This forced me to start speaking the truth about what I was really experiencing, and that things weren't perfect, and that I actually really did need more help and more support. And that's why one of my biggest advice would be, one, surround yourself with community, and meaning a lot of people that are in the same space as you, like with kids that are your same age, because they just get it. They want to talk about potty training forever. They want to talk about foods forever. So you don't drive other folks away. And but I also really recommend being friends with people with older kids, and even grandmothers, because when you're all in it together, you can all get fixated on things, or you can't really help each other out, because I knew that if I asked so-and-so to watch my kid, I would have to pay them back. Meanwhile, I just wanted a break and not to have to take care of anybody else's kids to pay them back. And so having people at the church or grandmoms that would help, and or people with older kids that I could ask, is this normal? Which was really, really helpful. I joined a gym, and even though I don't like to work out, but you could put your kids in childcare. So I went to the gym, and I would just sit on the bike. I barely pedaled. I pedaled a little bit, but mostly read my book so that I could have that time. I joined like every ladies' Bible study that there was childcare at the church. So if you don't have people, find things like that. And if not, you can exchange those times with other people. But I just those got me through the days. Just having those little breaks to myself, having my body to myself, not touching kids hanging off me. And my second daughter didn't sleep until she was 15 months old. So that was very hard. She was lovely in the night, but up in the night. I'm curious if she thought that was our only time alone, but we followed through with our plan with the French immersion. My dad speaks French, so we really wanted that for our kids. And switch gears into the school age stuff. I was now as stable as I could be, and the medicine was working, and I wasn't depressed anymore. No major depressions. for a very long time, actually. I still experienced hypomania, but like so muted and so much more manageable. And of course, it would pop up here and there where I wasn't managing well, but it was just, I felt like I could breathe and actually, look for strategies to help or take a moment before reacting to things. The medicine would take care of a lot of the symptoms that were keeping me from being able to even think straight. I still fought with the perfectionist mom. I love school because like I'm a teacher, so I got involved with anything and everything. I became the fundraiser committee. I probably raised the most money doing a carnival or this. I would just do things like that, and sometimes to the detriment of my kids, because I would be taking all this time to do these planning meetings that I wouldn't be hanging out with them, right? And one of my daughters really struggled in school, and that was really hard for me, that she hated school and never, even though she loved books when she was little, as soon as their school was just pressure, and she didn't, we now know she has learning difficulties and diagnosed with ADHD. And so it was really hard for her, and we didn't know because of the French. And so I kind of knew something was up, but they just kept telling me, oh, it's because of the French. She'll eventually be able to read. So it was very difficult. She had a lot of tantrums, and just raising a neuroatypical child when yourself are dealing with things, it's a lot. I I read everything I could and tried to do everything I could, but a lot of times, because we were similar and we would trigger each other, that we would, it was hard. It was hard. When they were littler, they would be cute, and they would do little things that would upset you, and you would get over it really quickly. But the way she deals with her anxiety is she is mad and mean. And so when a kid cries when they're frustrated or upset, you feel sorry for them. When they're yelling at you, it's harder. So I could be thrown into tizzies about that, and I would have to hide in my room and pass it off to my husband. And those were some hard years, and especially finding out that she struggled with anxiety and ADHD and dyslexia, because I thought that all of this must be my fault. It must come from my family because I have a bipolar, and, always wondering if people find out, are the parents going to not let them come to our house if they find out? And so I kept it a very on wraps secret. One of my kids really struggled with friendships, and I wish I could have been more chill about that. I was the opposite of the people that think their kids can do no wrong. I was always like, drilling her what was her part in things. And I was always thinking maybe it was all our fault or what we're doing. And I just spent so much time. I started little groups with the girls that weren't getting along. And she was just always really drawn to the drama throughout all of school. And I would stress, I felt like everyone had to like her and like us. And so it was hard. I feel like I was really hard on her, and I think I did my best. And I think if I really look back, I did like a kick-ass job for what I was dealing with. Yeah, I overcommitted to things, which didn't leave all my best energy for everyone else in my family. So I would show up and I would do these amazing things for other people, or spend all this time planning things. I remember the last carnival I did, when my second daughter was in grade 5, she didn't even want to go. Okay. I spent 5 months planning this, like full on school carnival for a school of 300 kids. And she didn't want to go. She went, but I was like, you are going after all I did, all that kind of stuff that you regret saying. But I forced her to go to the carnival. I think too, I probably passed on a lot of things about what people thought. I have made up for it in the past years, but still sometimes just what they wore and everything had to be, a certain, the way. I hated it when it didn't go. And now, like, I'm getting kicked in the butt with this whole sweatpants are in thing and socks and sandals is killing me. But like, if things didn't feel right, then then I was uncomfortable. So that would be another thing. I would definitely probably, if I had time, benefited from some therapy around that and around my expectations. And I think probably I helicopter parented a bit in terms of just not wanting, when it came to friendships or school, I just wanted to fix everything and everything be perfect. And lately I've learned of a term from my therapist that's now in the teen years that she mentioned that maybe I do, because I don't fix everything now, but she calls it snowplow parenting, where I just kind of move a lot of the obstacles out of the way, and any like kind of think ahead like we do, right? Always thinking ahead, push things out of the way that maybe they need to deal with. And so, yeah, working on the snowplow parenting. But as they got older, like I could influence them and I could dress them and I could do this. But as they got more and more independence, it really stressed me out. From 12 onwards, I just would feel like a failure on the daily. I was so hard on myself. I live in this space where I always think, even now, that there's a certain way to do things and I'm not doing it and I'm failing. I even think that I was thinking about it the other day, like about podcasting. I only put out 2 a month and I don't do it on a special day. So clearly I'm not a true podcaster. Hello. If you have a podcast, guess what? You're a podcaster. I thought that about studying, about motherhood, just about everything. And I know when I got hypomanic, I would, do things like, we're going to eat all organic. And I'd throw everything out and go on the organic kick, or, just buy things that organization. Would get a lot of focus on organization. I would buy things that, were just going to change our life. And I would buy a lot of them and spend a lot of money. But because it was hypomania, it wouldn't put us into deep trouble. But sometimes I think if I saved all the money and where I bought stupid things that I thought was going to make our life better, that I may own a second property. I think that it was almost harder to parent when, not going to say that. I was going to say when I was hypomanic, but I felt like maybe I wasn't, because I was so hard, on looking like we were perfect, and that everything, being hard on them about like dance. I remember trying to do their hair and making them cry, not meanly, but they didn't like their hair done a certain way. And one of the teachers at this class made like fun of our bun because it wasn't perfect. It was too wispy. Do you see our hair? It was supposed to be in a slick bun. It was like impossible. So I would make them sit there as I did this. And lots of caring what people thought, when I should have just been like to the teacher, like, this is our hair. We're trying our best here, right? So and if friends needed me, I would, I put friends and being kind to friends before being kind to like my partner or my mom. So, asking for help, because my mom could take time off and she would come. My husband used to travel for work, especially in the fall. And so we would always set up that she would come. And that was so helpful. She would just take over playing with the kids so I could do the house stuff. But yeah, I just remember being really hard on her. So some of the conflicts are sometimes when, the preteen years, and just the arguments and the fighting, or trying to convince them to, I remember I fought tooth and nail for them to stay in dance and gymnastics. Who cares? I felt like there was something wrong with us, that our kids didn't like sports. I don't like sports. I felt like they had to be in something, or they couldn't quit anything. Meanwhile, they started to hate dance and they did cheer after a while. And now I'm finding it, I think this is probably one of the hardest stages, is launching young adults. I know as they became teenagers and with phones. Before, it was like if they make a mistake, it's like, oh, easily fixable, or they learn from their mistake or whatever. But the stakes seem huge as preteens and teens. Like, if they do something stupid online, it's there forever. If, you can make huge mistakes and things that could change the trajectory of your life. And so there's a lot of arguing and headbutting, especially with one specific daughter that is too similar to me. And so a lot of people say, hey, like, you must be an awesome parent because you get it and you get the mental health thing. And on one hand, yes, but on the other, it's very hard to teach your children strategies that you struggle with yourself. But I think another one of my biggest tips, or looking back, would be to just be open and honest with your kids. I've told them since they were little, in words that they understood, in ways that they understood, that all brains are different, and mom struggles with this, and at this time I need to go and sleep because that's going to keep my brain healthy. And we always talked about it. So my kids are so open, and both do struggle with their mental health, but they know the things. And they also, I try to model things in front of them. I model, hey, like, I need to go and actually read by myself, or I need this time teaching them how to self-soothe. Yeah, just how important play is, and fun. Like, we try and do things that are fun. Now I call them forced family fun because they don't really like anything anymore to do, like the walks and stuff that we used to do. But I try and be, lenient about want to come to things or not, because I would make them go to everything that I wanted to go to, that we felt we needed to. So I think, being just really, really honest and modeling for your kids. When you mess up, you say sorry, you try to make amends, and you talk about, what you can do so that it doesn't happen again. And even though sometimes it's over and over and over again, my kids know that you just keep trying. And we also talk a lot about toxic positivity, and we don't use words like at least, because anything that starts with at least minimizes what someone's feeling, right? Like, at least so and so, or you don't have it as bad. And we don't do good vibes only, we do all vibes welcome. And I've tried to let my kids feel their feelings. It is hard. You want to just fix the things. It's hard to see their heartbreak, and letting them make their mistakes, right? And not feeling, my big thing is not, I've had to work on a lot, not feeling like their mistakes are a direct reflection of who I am and my parenting. That one's a tough one. Get hypomanic, and when I get anxious, I get more rigid, and I try to control, which backfires, especially with teenagers, right? So also their tween years were through the pandemic. So holding it together, my fear, and holding space for theirs and not making theirs worse. I notice that I say I'm anxious about a lot of things. So I try to give more language to it instead of just that. So they don't just, I talk about how, I'm worried about this, but yet this is what I can do, or something like that. That reminds me of something when my kids were really, really little. Even, when we go camping or whatever, before pre-diagnosis, I would have backup plan upon backup plan upon backup plan, and have all the stuff we need. That's why I travel with a cajillion bags. Strollers were awesome for me because you could bring so much stuff. And then if something went wrong, or I didn't have like the burp cloth I needed, or the proper change of clothes, or whatever, I would berate myself, and just be so hard on myself. So have people in your life, or a therapist, to remind you to give yourself grace. I tell my kids, and I tell myself, like, I've never done this before. This is the first time I've had a teenager or a young adult. And so I'm learning as I go, and that didn't work. And so let's try something new. And we have a lot of do-overs in our family if we start the day wrong, or if we get into a head-on, argument. Um, we say, hey, can I have a do-over? Because I am very reactive, and I have very strong opinions about a lot of things. And then 2 hours later, I actually don't. But in that moment, the urgency, the bipolar anxiety makes it a big deal. So there's a lot of apology tours, mommy apology tours around here. I think another thing is when I am feeling an episode come on, whether it be depression or especially if I'm hypomanic, I prep by making things easy. So I do things, I clear off things on our plate that aren't immediate, right? Maybe things that I usually do all the time, but they aren't necessary, and just focus on, the things that are. And especially I wish I could be one of those people that stress cleaned or stress cooked, but I hate those things, and I hate them even more. And I get bitter about it, and frustrated that people have to eat so much around here. And so I make things easy. I buy, frozen pizzas, frozen lasagnas, just easy meals, so that I don't have to think too much about that, but then I can keep feeding people, and that we don't just have cereal or popcorn for dinner. I also ask my husband to step in a bit more. He works till late, so we've kind of decided that I make most of the dinners, but on weekends or the nights that he can, or prep, I'll say, this is where I'm at. I'm going to need extra help. And then he tries his best. I'm very lucky to have such a hands-on helpful partner. I don't think I would have got through a lot of this or been as well as I am without him, because he would take over when I was depressed, and he would get home. He knew that I would need that time, and I would just go to my bed for a while, and he would just boom, jump right in. And so that's helpful. I try to do connect with the kids with something I've learned that they like, which isn't as fun now. Actually, it's getting kind of fun because they want like Starbucks and stuff. It's just getting expensive now, but something that they choose that they want to do. And I try to give them a couple choices when they were little, and I wanted to do all of them. So no matter what they chose, they had the control, but that I also liked it. So I really focused on, maybe I'm not, our meals aren't elaborate or big, fancy, but I can play Barbies for 2 hours, or I can come up with a really fun craft or that kind of thing. So trying to do that. Another thing is, I always feel bad because I'm so intense. I'm like, oh, we don't have like a peaceful and zen and spa like home. And I learned that, just to play spa like peaceful music. I find that if you have things in the background of how you want to feel, even if you don't feel it, you're setting the stage for something. So we play a lot of music in our house, calming music. Now, not so much. Now it's mostly T Swift and other things. When I needed to listen to the hardcore, angry, get it all out music, it was mostly with me in my car. That's one thing you can do if you don't, have a lot of money. We talk about self-care, but when you're stay-at-home mom, or what I like to say, CEO of the family, you don't have a lot of money left over or time for a lot of self-care. So like driving for me, listening to audiobooks and podcasts, especially during the pandemic or times when they're home a lot, need that time. And so I do that, and I do some of my hysterical crying, not so much in front of them, but in cul-de-sacs or when they're in school. The biggest thing is, and it's going to sound so cheesy to some, but finding a way to talk kindly to myself, and finding a way to, not hold on to where I think I messed up, right? Because I can do, 2 months of pretty good parenting, but I'll remember the 2 times I yelled or lost it or whatever. That's been harder as they become teens, because the listening isn't. And I feel like in my family, it was always like the louder person was listened to. So we are yellers. We don't scream, but we are very loud. And so I'm always working on that, being kind to yourself and reminding yourself that some of the things are actual symptoms, right? Like I always berate my character or who I am, like you're an angry, terrible person. And I'm not. A symptom of it is anger. It's my duty to try and manage that best I can and not just give into it and be really nasty. But at the same time, it isn't like a moral failure. So being kind and gentle to myself, that same thing. I have friends with kids that are older and kids that are younger, so we can like just have those conversations, and I can encourage ones with younger, and the ones with older kids can tell me like I will get through. And also surrounding myself with not toxically positive people that listen and like, that is hard, and don't try and fix it, right? All that, holding space. We have a really good episode on that. Words that help. Also, if you're wondering what doesn't help, words that hurt. Those episodes, I think they're 14 and 15 episodes. Anyways, you can look back, but listening to my body. So I do let myself have rest and naps when I need them. I do sleep in on the weekends. I need more sleep than the average person, and I am okay with that now. For years I fought with, I'm lazy, or I should be getting up at 7 on Saturday and doing this and that. And I did put in my time when they were in dance and stuff, but if I don't have to, I don't have to. And now we go to, it's a whole other podcast, but we went to a very fundamentalist, strict evangelical church for a long time and love the people, but for many reasons we had to leave. So we have a super chill, non-denominational, affirming, awesome seeker trying to figure out folks. So we would have never missed a Sunday, even if none of us, like, unless we were like sick. And now, we don't force ourselves. If we listen to our bodies, we listen to how we're feeling. I don't force myself to go and be fake, and have a lot better boundaries, because that's showing up for people, that I'm not the closest with, more than showing up. If that's affecting how I'm showing up for my closest friends and my family unit, then I have to set a boundary there, because I want my family to have the best of me. So that's another one. Self-care and kindness. And also, despite how much I hate the exercise, moving my body. It's helped so much since we've had a dog, because basically I got the dog because my kids weren't as excited to see me. I needed someone that was ridiculously excited to see me. But now, I feel bad if I don't go for a walk, but just moving my body in some way, even if it's like to the end of the cul-de-sac, or even if it's just, I don't like to exercise alone. I'm much better at it now because I have to, because of my back injury, but I try and set up, so it's not so expensive going out with friends for dinner or for brunch or for this. I'll set up walks so that it's 2 birds with 1 stone, and I can walk forever and up hills if I'm chatting with a friend. So I try to do that. I have to move my body, and I also have to have like pre-made snacks or snacks in the car. And as soon as the kids went to school, like, I was used to eating lunch and used to eating things because I had to feed them, so I ate. But once they went to school and I didn't, if I would get hypomanic, it would be awful. I wouldn't eat, and that doesn't help with the old moods. And so I have car snacks, and everywhere purse snacks, which are things that are like healthy ones. And I'm kind to myself. I used to stress about holidays and not be able to enjoy myself because worried about food and such. And I didn't want my kids to grow up with disordered eating or thinking about our bodies as. I let that go, and I think it was a lot of mental work. And also, I was never diagnosed with the eating disorder because it wasn't year round. It was a symptom of the depression. And so if I find those thoughts creeping in, then I deal with them. I never call myself large or I'm really mean. The one thing I'm not doing that well on is talking about aging. We've been talking about how, society, the pressures for women, but also that the choices that we make, right? Like I'm so gray, my hair, but I'm not going to stop dyeing it yet. And that's a choice, right? But like I try not to go on and on about wrinkles, etc., because I want them to have a healthy image. Honestly, if you can get to a place where you think you are managing your bipolar disorder, I think we can be wonderful parents. I am fully engaged with my children. I love this idea and I've read about it, and my friend that studies, a lot about children and psychology. You need to be a good parent 70% of the time, right? I want to mug this as world's okayest mom, because they're going to remember that. Obviously, the 30%, you can't be horrible. But if you make some mistakes and such, your kids are going to be okay, because the 100% was just too much. And so I hope I haven't messed them up too much. I will start a therapy fund. My kids some of them go to counseling. We're just very open about that. And it's really cool because my one daughter last year, grade 9, I think, 10, whatever, one of the years, I found out after she was doing a project on bipolar disorder. And then when she told me, then she interviewed me and she presented it, and she didn't care. And she was like 15, 14. And she's telling all her friends that her mom lives with bipolar disorder without a blink. I can hear her say, when they say, I can't, I'm going to therapy or counseling or whatever, and they're not ashamed. The next generation, it's so, they're growing up with so much less stigma. We have a long way to go, but I think that we can raise some of the most empathetic and compassionate children, because they see struggle and they see adversity and how we deal with it. And I think we need to have a plan. If you want to be a parent, you need to have a plan. What do you do if you get depressed? What do you do? What are your warning signs? Just being so self-aware so that you can try and manage it and best you can. And if not, you need to know when you need to remove yourself or look into more medication or get more therapy, etc., because it is a lot. It's the hardest job I've ever done, but also the most rewarding. So I think that, I think that we can do hard things. And I think that if we're using our tools and doing all the things to keep well, that we can be awesome parents, or world's okayest parents, which is good enough, right? They're going to remember the good things, and we're going to mess up. And just like our parents did, we're going to do things that, messed up our kids a bit, but not giant trauma, right? Living with a parent with mental illness is only traumatic if they're not staying well or keeping care of themselves or doing all they can. I mean, if you are struggling and you know that you're affecting your children in terrible ways, then you go to the hospital. You do the things, you put them first when it comes to, protecting their peace. But yeah, modeling taking care of yourself is, I think, one of the most powerful things, right? They don't do what we say, they watch what we do and do what we do. And so, yeah, that's kind of, I hope that's helpful. I would love you to go on the Instagram and ask me anything. I'm always up for it. Yeah. And I'll probably do one just on teenagers one day, but I'm still muddling through that. So I'm just really glad that I can be. I think that's the one thing with your friends and your family and your kids, just to be honest about where you're at and why you're there, and then share them what you're going to do about it. I think that's pretty awesome. My kids are so empathetic. They know when I need an extra nap, or they're can I do this for you sometimes? I mean, they're kids. Obviously not all the time, but I think they're pretty empathetic and towards others, and they'll be like, and I think they have more grace for their friendships. They don't take things as personal. They try, because they're like, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they have this. And I know a lot of their friends have opened up about their mental health with my kids because they know it's a safe space. So before I go, just a reminder that there's subscriptions to go deeper on Instagram. If this episode meant anything to you, or if you think it could help anyone else out, I would love if you liked it or saved it or subscribed to the podcast. All of those things help get this information and some real life experience out there to those that feel alone or are wondering. Finding a community of other folks that and parents that deal with mental illness is key as well, because to know that we're not alone and to be able to encourage each other, I think, is a really beautiful thing. Please join us on the regular Instagram. We have conversations. We have all different kinds of days where we can interact with each other and encourage each other. And then if you want to go deeper, you can subscribe and support me and the work I do, and we can keep smashing stigma together. So winter, there will be the panel where we talk to parents with other experiences, parents that live with bipolar disorders. So this is Bipolar. Thanks again for tuning in. You can find video versions of This is Bipolar on our YouTube channel. We also have all our previous and soon to be future episodes of the podcast on Apple, Podbean, Spotify, and Google Play. We spend most of our time on Instagram at this.is.bipolar. There is a vibrant community there where we have conversations and post different ideas and different strategies, and we'd just love for you to join us there. It is so helpful if you enjoy our work or think it would be helpful to someone if you could like and share and save and follow us in all or any of those spaces. If you're a listener for the podcast, if you could leave a review, we would be forever grateful. Again, thank you for being here with us. Let's get the word out. Let's share lived experiences so that we can change the ideas that people have about bipolar and help those of us that live with it feel less alone. This is Bipolar.